Today's guest is a sales survivor. If you dropped him on an island with just a phone and a search engine, he's still going to find a way to hit quota, and he can help you do the same. Mike Muhlfelder is the founder and head of sales at COM2Scale, and he's here to dismantle a few myths. No, not every great rep becomes a great leader. And no, Ken or Karen from ops shouldn't be handed a sales org because they ran a team once. Mike's all in on sales as a profession, trained, intentional, and disciplined. He's got no patience for BANT interrogations, and he leans on the 4Ws to separate tire kickers from real deals. If you're in sales, this one's a gem. In this episode, if it gets you thinking, get loud, drop a comment on LinkedIn, and hit the subscribe button on the Coach2Scale YouTube channel. Let's go.
Welcome to Coach2Scale, how modern leaders build coaching cultures. I'm your host, Matt Benelli. Join me as we build a community of like-minded professionals who share the belief that effective coaching improves the performance of every team member. Our mission is to help leaders become better coaches. The Coach2Scale podcast is sponsored by Coachum, the world's first AI coaching execution platform that leverages evidence-based coaching to increase quota attainment. And with that, let's get started.
All right, everybody, excited for today's guest. This is the Coach2Scale podcast, and today's guest fits very well as he's committed to helping SaaS and emerging companies overcome go-to-market challenges and scale revenue. He's got 3 decades of experience and wisdom to share, so you're going to really want to listen closely. He's honed his craft at big companies like Oracle and IBM, as well as fast-growing concerns like LogMeIn, Jitterbit, and Map Anything. Currently, he's the founder and head of sales at COM2Scale and the founder of the Go-to-Market Lab. Mike Muhlfelder, welcome to Coach2Scale.
Matt, great to be here. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. As I mentioned when we first chatted, I feel like we've been spirit animals. We've been swimming in a similar pond on different sides for a long time now.
Yeah, we have. And I love the Sandler sales bond because that was the quick story on that. I was working at LogMeIn at the time, and I've been through pretty much every sales training known to man, going back to, I think, the spin selling and Miller Hyman way back in the day. And they said, oh, yeah, we're doing sales training with Sandler Sales. And I was like, yeah, I'm good. And they said, no, you should go. Your team's going to go through it. I said, my team's going to go through it. I'll go through it. And it was one of the best sales trainings I'd ever been through. I became friends with Mike Myers as a result. And I brought him in to do a Sandler training for my team at Map Anything. Yeah, it was one of those fortuitous things that happen in your life and your career.
Fortuitous is a really good word. And I feel similarly about the methodology, but even more special that I learned the Sandler methodology through Mike. And he went on to be the guru, my mentor, and ultimately my friend and business partner for a long time. Solid guy. Glad we have that bond. So, Mike, there's a lot of myths out there in sales and when it comes to coaching and leading salespeople. What's one of those myths that you've heard time and time again that maybe is misguided or you don't agree with? You think it might even be complete BS?
I think there's 2 pop to mind right away. One is that great salespeople make great sales leaders. And the other, which I've experienced at a few companies, usually large companies, is that people from outside of sales make great sales leaders.
Okay, I understand the first one completely. The second one I want to make sure I get. So you're saying you think it's a myth that someone could come in from outside of the go-to-market arena, come in because they have an MBA and they were in some, let's say, operational function.
Yeah, and I'm not demeaning any other function.
But the myth is that they can come in and pick it up right away. Okay.
Right. It falls, or the fault line is sales it's a people business, or, oh, it's not that difficult, or anybody can do it. It's really about the operational side of it. Number one, it's insulting to a career sales professional, but we'll set that aside. But it also doesn't really comprehend, similar to, I can't be in finance if I'm not trained in finance. I can't be in HR if I'm not trained in HR. I can't be in engineering. Now, could I lead one of those teams? Yes, point. But then there will be questions about something related to the function that I don't know. and I haven't walked in the shoes. I haven't done the job. So I can't relate to it in a way that is going to make sense to a professional in that role. And we see the same thing in sales. So when you, again, I think this is more of a plague of an enterprise business where I'm going to take this person who's been at the company for 20 or 25 years and put them in charge of sales or a sales team. They don't know the job.
Yeah. So you've mentioned the word profession and professional several times in the last few sentences, which I think is phenomenal. But I also think that I don't want to overlook this, because when you talk about finance as a profession,
Yeah.
people get it. When you talk about accounting as a profession, people get it. When you talk about sales as a profession, I believe fewer people actually get that right away. I don't think people look at sales like they do finance or legal or medicine as a profession.
Yeah.
It's, Matt didn't know what to do. He got a political science degree, so he went into sales because he couldn't get elected or something like that, right?
Yeah.
That happens. And that was something that came to me through Mike Myers and Sandler's help, where I realized later on that sales was a profession. But here's my question, Mike. There's been a sea change in the way with the advent of so many companies, right? Technology, the internet, it's allowed so many companies, free money. It's allowed so many companies to start. And with all those companies that came to market, many of them didn't benefit, the salespeople of these companies didn't benefit from an investment. And so I think over time, what you have is many salespeople, or perhaps even generations of salespeople who have become sales leaders who never learned to properly sell. Is there a trickle down? Do you agree with that? And is there a trickle down to that?
I do agree with it. I do think there's a trickle down. I've written about it. I have not been shy about it. I think we're in a very difficult place in B2B sales. So to try to be brief, I came up in a different era, obviously. You can take one look at me and you can tell. You said it. I've been doing this for decades.
You don't look it, Mike. You
Oh,
just
bless your heart. I've got heavy filters on this. But there was no technology when I started. We had payphones and desk phones. It was exciting when we got calling cards and could go to a payphone and put in a calling card number so we didn't have to pay for the payphone call out of our pocket. And we went to sales training and we had weekly sales meetings and you talked with your peers on a regular basis and you learned how to sell. Now, I did not. I came to sales at a time in my life where I didn't come from a lot of money, and I'm being kind about that. I had bills to pay, college loans to pay, rent. I needed to make money. I needed to make as much money as I could. And even the basic selling that I was doing at the time, which was not B2B, afforded me more money than I could make working in retail. But because I didn't know anything about it, I had to learn it. I had to, like, from the ground up. There were, for the older folks on the call, or if you want to Google this or put it into ChatGPT, there were Tom Hopkins and Zig Ziglar, and you would buy their books in cassette tapes, and you would listen to the cassette tapes in your car and literally learn how to sell. And now you fast forward to, I'll say, if I'm going to put a number on it, let's say 2012-ish, post 2008 crash, which is an important marker. Money is flowing into the business world like we have actually never experienced in our lifetimes. And people, now we have BDRs and you learn how to be a BDR and then you learn how to sell and eventually you get promoted into a leadership role. But the sales dynamic changed. And now we start layering in all these other tools, and we build a tech stack and we have HubSpot and Salesforce and Sixth Sense and SalesLoft and Outreach. These are great tools. They're wonderful. But with all those tools, we still see sales teams where only 25 to 40, maybe 60% of the team is making quota. That's it. Our close rates are considered world-class at 25 and 28%. I've got $1 million tech stack, and theoretically or logically, everybody should be making their number, right? But they're not.
Why?
Because we didn't teach people how to sell. And I really jumped into this both hands, both feet a few years ago as it really started to settle in with the teams that I was running back at Jitterbit, and then afterwards as a fractional leader. So I'll pick on Jitterbit for a moment. So we came up with this notion back when I was at Siebel Systems, which was the creator of CRM, right? That the category didn't exist. And we came up with this metric of, you need 3 times quota in pipeline to make your number. I don't know that there was ever any science to it, but it sure made sense. But basically, we're saying your close rate's going to be less than 30%. So theoretically, then you need 3x to get to your number. And okay, great. And now today we talk about, you need 4x, 5x, 6x, et cetera, which all it says is, so we are allowing ourselves to get worse. So many things wrong with this metric, by the way. When I was at Jitter, we never had 3x pipeline. I use the word never in a literal sense here. We never did. We were always between 1.9 and maybe we got to 2.5x in a quarter. But we would get 75 to 95% of quota as a team every single quarter. How would we do it? We got really good at qualification. We got really good at discovery. We knew what our ICP was. We knew what our IOP, our ideal opportunity profile, looked like. And we really honed in on that. We knew when we had a deal and when we didn't. So there were a few aha moments along the way. And it goes back even farther to when I was at Map Anything. And I am trying to make a point here on learning to sell. We were using BANT, which companies are still using today. Now I'm going to step to the side a little bit. If you're using BANT, please lock in right now. Stop using BANT right now. BANT was invented by IBM.
Stop using BANT. Okay, there's a lot of companies that use that as their opportunity qualification checklist, if you will.
Right. It's
budget for everyone out there. I think everyone knows this, but just in case, budget, authority, need, timeline, right? BANT.
Yep. You need to know those things, but BANT as designed and defined, it puts you into an adversarial situation with your prospect, and it actually doesn't tell you if you have a qualified opportunity. When it was created by IBM 70 years ago, and you heard me right, 70 years ago, it was great. But I don't think that there's anything that you're using in your business or any business is using today from 70 years ago that still works, to my point. On Map Anything, we used a technology for call recording. I was on a plane listening to a BDR call, and the prospect said to the BDR, "Are you banting me?" And the tone of the call changed immediately. I didn't expect anything like that. So I started to listen to other calls from other BDRs. And at roughly the same point in the call, in the questioning, didn't matter who was delivering it, the same thing was occurring. And what we realized was there's a psychology to selling. People come to these calls, they come to a sales meeting, especially on the first call, and they're like, okay, I'm meeting with the sales guy. He's going to ask me, what am I buying? He's going to ask me about my budget, and I'm going to bob and I'm going to weave. By the way, that's not how I got this. That's a whole nother story. But people are already they don't want to talk to the salesperson, which is part of where we are also in the technology world today. So here's how we solved it. I came up with something called the 4W qualifying questions. And this comes from selling, by the way, and it comes from spending time in the job. So I'm going to step to the side a little bit. I'm going to come back to the point.
Okay.
When you are in your career and you have dedicated yourself to always learning, how you spend your time is up to you. But if you're spending your time on watching video games and binging on Netflix, that's fine. There's a time and a place for that. But you need to also be focused on your job and your career and getting better at it all the time and fine-tuning your skills. Which now brings me back to the 4 W's and the psychology of selling and learning about the psychology of selling. All of this comes from my not being a terrifically well-educated person, barely graduated high school, barely got into college, barely graduated from a state college in New Hampshire in the 80s. So I'm not an Ivy League or Baby Ivy or anything like that. So the psychology is that people want to have a conversation. We're humans interacting with humans. We're not selling to General Motors. I'm not selling to Coach 'em. I'm selling to Matt Benelli.
Companies don't buy, people buy.
So the first question that we ask in qualification, and this is really specific to B2B, though I could make it a B2C sale. I could even make it work for if I was selling cars. First question is, hey, Matt, just out of curiosity, what happened that you reached out to ComMotion Sales? So a couple of things in that question. First off, it is what's called a pattern interrupt, because the person, your prospect, is not expecting that question. So it stops them. Second thing that happens is that many of the people that we talk to in qualification and B2B are not accustomed to being asked their opinion or their input on things. So now they're like, oh, Mike he wants to know. He's asking me a question. So they answer it. By the way, to be clear, the what happened is the catalyst or the trigger. It is not the business problem. We're going to come back to that in a second.
Yeah, my boss is in my grill every day, and I have to miss dinners with my family to put these reports together, blah, 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 because we're not doing well.
Bingo.
The trigger is I'm stressed out.
Yeah.
That's not the business problem.
Something broke or is about to broke. Something bad's going to happen. So Mike Myers and I talked about this once because I was at my acupuncturist, right? So you learn from different people if you allow yourself to. My acupuncturist asked me, I hadn't seen him in almost a year. And he said, so what's going on? What can't you do? And I was like, what do you mean, what can't I do? He said, well, I know you. What can't you do that you decided to come to see me? So I told him that I was having trouble in the gym. I couldn't do something. And he's like, yeah. He goes, at a certain point, people come to me because of weakness or just excruciating pain, but not because they just need to see me. Yeah. And it was like a light bulb moment. So we asked the what happened question. And the next question is, why is that important now? What changed in the business? Because this is the business problem itself. The fallacy sales and selling is that we've been taught to sell to pain. People and businesses do not change because of pain. Businesses can operate in pain for decades and not take action. They can even talk to salespeople and be in pain and not take action. But if there's a trigger event and business problem, and then we get into the financial metrics and financial components associated with the problem to determine, does it make sense to solve the problem? Now we're getting somewhere.
So can I jump in?
Please.
What I hear you saying is, you said people don't buy based off pain. But what I hear, if I listen a little bit more closely, is people don't buy until there's enough pain. And so the way our mutual friend Mike would describe it is money will exchange hands when the pain of change becomes less than the pain of staying the same. You will go to your acupuncturist when the pain of going to the acupuncturist is less than the pain of staying at home and dealing with it. So it's still pain. It's just what level of pain?
It's the pain has gotten to where it is untenable or is affecting your ability to do something else that you need or want to do.
That's a great question by the acupuncturist. Like you said, I thought it's awesome quote. You can learn from almost anyone or anything if you let yourself.
Yeah.
You're open to it. And the acupuncturist, hey, nobody comes in to see me because they're doing great. What is your reason for coming in?
What can't you do? Yeah, what can't you do? And I can relate to this even very specifically right now. I had surgery on my shoulder 2 weeks ago. Minor surgery, I'm fine. I hurt my shoulder last August weightlifting. Hurt right away, by the way. It wasn't a gradual, it was like instant, boom, that's bad, that's going to be a problem. I didn't go to the doctor until February.
Yeah.
I kept saying, I can fix it, it'll be okay. I'll give it time, I'll work through it. And then it got to the point where it was affecting my sleep. It was affecting my ability even like to ride a bike. Almost anything I wanted to do was painful and difficult. And I started to think about, I got this big bike ride coming up. It's coming into summer. I like to fish. And I'm going to have to do something about this or at least find out, will it heal itself?
Yeah, bad stuff gets worse.
Yeah. And it just got to a point where it was affecting my life. So you have to do something about it. But that took 6 months. So if you think about it now from a business standpoint, you're selling to a multi-billion-dollar Fortune 500 company. Do you really think that your $1 million solution or your $20,000 a year solution is going to be that important to them? No. there has to be a massive offset to make it worth their time and trouble, which brings us to the third question, which is
so the first question was what happened that caused you to reach out. The second question is why now? What's important about right now? What's changed? Something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
So
third question
is who owns the project? Meaning, who is the senior executive that said you need to reach out to ComMotion Sales, or you need to go and talk to get a bunch of vendors together who have this solution? And the reason why that's important is if you can line up your catalyst, your what happened, to a senior executive, you have budget. Maybe not every time, 90% of the time. Because especially in this day and age, nobody has cycles. No senior executive is going to say, he's probably got plenty of time on his hands. I'm going to have Mike go and talk to a bunch of vendors, and then he's going to bring me proposals, which are going to take me time to review and circulate because I have lots of time on my hands too. No, it's like, you have a problem, I need to fix it. And I'm telling you, as the CIO or CFO or CEO, go get it fixed. So I've got a C-level officer saying, go fix this problem.
So, Mike, the third question is who owns the project? And I know that there's a lot of people that'll listen to this that will shake their head and they'll say, yeah, the answer to that question is no one, because there's not even a project. Like, meaning, let's talk about that for a second, because I think you learn a lot by asking the question and you learn a lot when someone says, well, we don't really have a project, I'm just fishing.
Yep.
What can you learn from that question? But more importantly, Mike, what do you say or do when you hear something along the lines of, I don't really have one?
I don't really have it. Now we're getting into, is it personal pain that they're trying to solve? And if they're trying to solve for personal pain by taking your proposal and your information, going to their boss or their boss's boss and saying, aha, it takes me 10 hours a week to manually input information into NetSuite. I found a solution that will do it automatically for just $20,000 a year. Aren't I wonderful? And the CFO says, that's not a problem for me. That's not a problem I even need to solve. And frankly, I pay you a salary to do that. And so I'm sorry that you're not having dinner with your family one night a week because you're putting information into NetSuite. Now, as the salesperson on that call, and by the way, this now takes us back to the thing about having somebody outside of sales running sales. Somebody outside of sales is going to say, no, that's still an opportunity, and you should convert that. So my SQ percentages go up, and I have my conversion rates and all that stuff, and the vanity metrics. I pat myself on the back and say, look how great we are. But what we're not doing is we're not looking further down the pipeline to see what deals stall, what stage do they stall at, do they ever even close? Which is, by the way, that's what we do in sales. We close deals. There's nothing valuable to the business of having a deal just sit and languish for weeks or months or years at the proposal stage and never close. This is one of the things that we kind of screwed up over the last 10 or 15 years. So the who owns the project, and sometimes we have to be very specific. I'm not reaching out to that person. I'm not reaching out to the reason I'm asking you is I want to make sure that this is an actual project. And if it's not, if it's like we've been talking about it, it might be a project for 2026, 2027. That's fine. That's great. Those are leads. We need those. And we nurture them. And that's where we use technology to send information every month, invite them to events and on. Eventually, maybe they will buy. I'm not saying you kick them to the curb and never talk to them again. Quite the opposite. Those are leads, and that's the lifeblood of the business. But they don't go into your pipeline, and they certainly don't go into your forecast. And the problem is that's what we've been doing for the last several years is we consider that the deal to be qualified. It goes into the pipeline. We now end up with a 3-4x pipeline, but we don't close deals. And we don't close deals because they were never actually qualified.
Yeah.
Which takes us back to the fourth question, which is, when do you need to be in production? So now you tie the 4 W's together. If I have a catalyst, I have a business problem that my solution can actually solve. I have a senior executive telling me you need to go solve it, and it needs to be fixed by October 1st. I have a qualified opportunity. This is now when I get to go and sell. And now I can go do an actual discovery, which is going to lead me to doing a very specific demonstration, presentation, a proposal that ties all of the things that I've learned together to get to a yes. And I know I'm painting with a very broad brush, but people need to understand I've been doing this a long time. I work with multiple businesses. I read a ton. I have a large network, or a few large networks that I'm involved with. So I get lots of information. There may be companies out there that have this really figured out. They've nailed it and they're doing great. But I will tell you that they're few and far between.
They're definitely few, far between. Mike, what do you say to those who say, yeah, but Mike, I can't answer these 4 questions, but I still have an opportunity? Or do I not work on this?
No, I'm not saying you don't work on it. What I'm saying is I actually have a company I'm working with right now where you may have to go back, interrogate the pipeline to find out, do you have these 4 W's so that you know that your forecast is accurate.
And so if you have the answer to these 4 questions, you don't need a 4X pipeline of opportunities that have or are working toward the answers to these 4 questions.
Yes. Here's the other part of that 4X, 5X pipeline. I'll spin it in a different direction. If you think about a sales lead or leads and the sales process as if it were a manufacturing process, your objective is to have the fewest number of leads. This is for the finance folks and RevOps folks that are listening, by the way, as well. Your objective is to have the fewest number of leads, which, by the way, there's a cost per lead, right? So you're saving money at the very front end of the process, top of funnel, that side of the bow tie, whichever you ascribe to get to the maximum number of closed-won opportunities, which is yield. So if I'm manufacturing something, I want to reduce my raw goods, my raw materials, and maximize my yield. And the entire process is each step. How many lathes do I need? How many tons of steel? Whatever it is that you're making to get to a maximum yield. We need to do the same thing in sales. Figuring out also the best source for leads, events, word of mouth, marketing, outbound campaigns, whatever it is, to get to the maximum yield. If I say I'm going to go from 3X to 4X to 5X pipeline, that means I need more leads. Every lead costs $100. Every time I X the pipeline, I'm exponentially increasing the number of leads that are required to get to the number of opportunities. So it's math. I was terrible at math because Indiana Jones with the I hate snakes. Like, I hate math. And it's always math. It's always snakes, right?
Sales math is not hard.
It's always math. So how do I get to the fewest number of possible qualified opportunities from my leads to get to the maximum closed one? And it's not from pouring more into the top of the bucket. Because also, remember, we're humans. We can only work on a certain number of opportunities at a time before we get overwhelmed and we make mistakes. So if I'm working on 10 opportunities, if I tell you that you probably can't work more than 6 qualified opportunities in B2B at a time, unless you're doing transactional, then it's probably not a good thing to be working 10, because there's a good chance that you'll miss stuff, lose deals. So these are all things that really have, I think, become forgotten in the last several years from a sales standpoint, because we've gotten ourselves caught up in all these other metrics that kind of don't matter. And worse is that we spend money on technology for the tech stack that are all aligned to all these different pieces and parts, instead of saying, hey, if I took everything away from you, and I wrote about this recently, if I stripped you of every tool that you had, if you watch the show Alone, it's a great example. They put people on these remote islands with 10 survival tools. That's it. They got to build their own shelter, hunt for their own food. How long can you survive in the wild? Mm-hmm. Similar idea in sales. If I took away all of your technology, I left you with a phone and Google search. could you make your number? And how would you make your number?
All right, let me ask you this. What you're talking about is the professional training of salespeople,
Yeah.
right? Vis-a-vis the four questions that you walked us through.
Yeah.
You're layering on the fact that hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, depending on the size of the organization, are being invested in this tech stack that's not producing the desired results. The tech stack is not helping people sell more. You could make the argument that this automation is helping people get worse at scale. And now let's put ourselves in the board's position or the CEO's position, where a lot of sales leaders, a lot of CROs say they're spending an inordinate amount of time getting their teeth kicked in by their CEO
Yep.
and their board, who's pissed off that they spent all this money on the tech stack and they've hired all these people and the results aren't there. What happens to the CRO who's constantly in the fetal position trying to defend his or herself against the CEO and the board? That can't be good, short term or longer term. Do you have a position on that?
Yeah, I think this is a whole nother conversation. By the way, I just want to go one more thing and then let's talk about this.
Okay.
Which is, so now take what I just said about this notion of stripping away all your tools. And this now takes me back to being a professional salesperson. This is to the salespeople and the sales leaders. You have every single tool ever in the history of mankind as it relates to sales at your fingertips on YouTube, via ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, via Google search. You can learn anything and everything that you want to know about sales, how to solve problems, who's great at it, who are the gurus that I mentioned, Tom Hopkins, Zig Ziglar, Sandler Sales. It is all available to you to learn your craft. It is not up to your boss. It is not up to your company to learn it. You didn't get a degree in it. You didn't get it like you got a degree in accounting, right? Or computer science. You are going to have to learn it. So if you're choosing to spend your time at night or on the weekends playing video games, good, there's a time and a place for that. But if you're doing that at the cost of learning how to be a great salesperson, when AI comes for you, and it will come for you, that's on you. So
do you agree with that? This phrase that's been uttered on the show before, it's paraphrasing it, but AI won't replace salespeople, but salespeople who leverage AI will replace salespeople who don't.
Yeah, absolutely. AI is a phenomenal tool, generative, and it will replace salespeople and it will replace sales process. We're working through it. It's still really new, but it is as bigger than people are expecting. So now let me go to your question out, your CRO. There's a reason why the average tenure of a CRO or head of sales is about 18, 19 months. And it's been like that for a while. Some of it is our choice as a CRO to be like, I just can't have my teeth kicked anymore at this place. I'm going somewhere else. And the other is the board or a CEO deciding for whatever reason, Mike's not the guy. We're not getting any better. So it's up to us as sales leaders to look at the business, again, stripping away the technology, looking at your pipeline in terms of, is this actually a deal that's even qualified? Can we solve the problem? Financially, does it make sense for my sales team to be talking to this company? And if the answer is, I'm not sure, you need to go and find out and then clean your pipeline. I've had clients where we had to cleanse 70% of the pipeline. Another one, it was 90%. Now, fortunately, through a variety of means, we rebuilt the pipeline in about 6 weeks with a qualified pipeline. But imagine, this was a years-long problem of having a bloated pipeline. So if you're the CRO, yes, you are 100% putting yourself at risk by not taking this really honest approach to diagnosing your business. Now, CRO can mean lots of different things. Some CROs own the entire revenue process from lead to renewal. Others are chief sales officers, so they only own the revenue generation. Some have nothing to do with marketing. What you focus on depends on what your actual function is, and you may have to utilize other people. But fundamentally, you need to really dig into the deals in a very unemotional way, which as long as I've been in sales leadership, I've told my teams, my job is to be unemotional about your deal. My job is to look at your deal and say, you've got nothing here. You either need to figure out if you can get something or you need to stop. And if I tell you it's time to stop, it's time to stop.
So I want to take you down a specific road here because you're preaching to the choir. I'm with you. And I think you'll agree that this is the minority. Like most organizations aren't run this way. I remember when I first went through Sandler training, I was a second line manager. We talked about the importance of no being okay, getting the truth and negative reversing and strip lining, and the fact that the pipeline would get smaller. We got rid of, I forget what the percentage was, but we got rid of a lot of pipeline. And I went to a skip level forecast that Friday, all proud about how clean our pipeline was. And my boss's boss is like, what the hell's going on? Hey, listen, good news, bad news. The bad news is the pipeline's 70% smaller. The good news is it's clean. Long story short, that wasn't the right answer. No one gave a crap. Get this shit pipeline back in there. They didn't say it exactly that way, but it's like, hey, I don't care if it's crap or not. Get it in there because I don't want to have to answer. Now, this is a bigger organization, but these things happen in small organizations too. So let's just say, let's put that off to the side that the way you're describing is absolutely the right way to go. Just let's go down the road a little bit where you're the CEO, you're the CRO, and you're just getting kicked and kicked. Like you're bringing this home with you. What's your advice to leaders that are just stressed to the max?
So, first of all, I don't know if you've ever heard the adage, how does a company go out of business?
I think let me give you the answer. I think I know slowly, then fast, then all
Slowly
at once.
At first, then all at once.
Yeah.
And that's the thing you got to be thinking about with your pipeline. So if you're the CRO, head of sales, whatever the title is, the revenue generation is your responsibility. We'll just call it that. Then it is also your responsibility to communicate to your CFO, your CEO, and ultimately to the board. I am going to do something that's going to be painful at first. I am going to rip our pipeline to shreds. Be prepared, Mr. Board Member. We may see as much as 80% of the forecastable pipeline go away. And what we're going to be left with is something that we can build from. And within a quarter or two, we are going to have a pristine business. So you're buying yourself time not to make an excuse, but to actually get it fixed. But you have to communicate. And I think that's one of the problems. And by the way, I've been guilty in the past of fix it. Let me fix it. Let me fix it. Instead of saying, this is really messed up. Everybody's got to be in the boat together and everybody's going to be bought into it, or we won't get better. And you will eventually fire me and you'll bring in another CRO and you'll eventually 6 quarters out fire that person. But you will have spent a couple of $1 million in recruiting and salary and severance before that happens. And I'm trying to stop that. So that's the one communication. Now, the second is something that I do feel very personally, very deeply, which is I'm the CRO, or whatever your role is. I'm in a leadership role. I'm getting my head bashed in every day. And then I either walk out of my home office or I go home and I take it home with me. I can't stress this enough. You have to find a way to stop, even if that means that you quit your job. If you have to turn in the lease on your BMW as a result or whatever and go buy a 1999 Honda Accord and drive that for a while, do it. You must protect your health and your mental health and your family over and above all of it.
The numbers show that there's an increase in the issues that arise from very high stress levels and taking the job home with you. I'm not going to try to pretend to be a doctor. Just anecdotally observing these situations, I can tell you, I see it all the time.
I've been there, done that. Listen, I'm fortunate that I know plenty of people who have had issues with alcohol, issues with drugs, broken up marriages or relationships as a result of their work. And that's like, at the end of the day, I remember my now ex-wife, not related to work, by the way, saying to me for years, is this going to matter in 10 years? Is this job going to matter in 5 years? And the answer invariably was no, it's not. In fact, I'm not going to remember this deal. Company isn't going to remember the deal. And what we've seen now in the last 2 years is when the time comes, the company is not going to say to you, hey, Mike, you did a really great job. You generated $100 million in revenue. And as a result, we're going to give you a $10 million severance package. That only happens to people at a certain level of large corporations. The rest of us, it's like, there's the door. We're going to pay your benefits for a couple of months. We'll give you a few months of severance. And now you're going to go find another job. That's the world that we are all living in right now. So I'm imploring the people to live their life differently. And to the investors and the C-level officers that are making the decisions about the people, you need to understand that people are now actually going to start thinking that way. And they will. In fact, I had this conversation yesterday with family. Like, at a certain point, people aren't going to give 2 weeks notice. They're going to give you 2 hours notice. And the reason they're going to give you 2 hours notice is because we as employers have stopped earning the right to get 2 weeks notice.
I think a lot of the readings say that people give their notice long before they give their notice. It's like the quiet quitting or whatever the phrase is and stuff like that. So yeah, it's powerful stuff. And I know we could go, I would love to just keep going on this conversation because it's so prevalent. The problem faces so many people. And like you pointed out, you don't have to be the head of sales or the CRO. It's whatever your job is.
Yes, exactly.
It does not be in that situation. Mike, we talked about at the beginning how you founder of Calm Motion Sales and the Go-to-Market Lab. What are you doing these days? What are you most excited about?
So what I'm most excited about is a great way to close this. I love sales and I love selling and I love salespeople and sales leaders. I love business. I'm a curious guy, but the thing that is the most rewarding to me is when somebody reaches a level of personal and professional success that they've been working towards, and they are able to do something that they've always dreamed of. Right? I grew up in what today would be considered maybe a lower middle class home. There was nothing that would have ever indicated or predicted that I would have the life and the lifestyle that I ended up with. Sales did that for me. And I want that for other people. So what I'm doing today is trying my best, not trying, it's an action. I am doing my best to help businesses, to help people to be better at the function of driving revenue. How do we do this better? Because once we understand the process associated with doing and being better, now we can layer on technology and we can light this thing on fire. So if you fix your process and you understand your people, you understand why people buy, how to maximize performance in your people, and now you layer AI on top of it, you can't be beat. But if you do it the other way, you just go out and buy AI and you throw it at your people, you'll get worse faster, like really fast.
Mike, how can people, if they want to reach out, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Because I have a difficult last name. If you go to Calm Ocean Sales, one word.com, you'll find, that's my website. You'll find me there. You'll find me on LinkedIn. You can put it into Perplexity or ChatGPT and spell the name wrong. I'm the only Michael Muhlfelder professionally in the world. So I'm actually kind of
Congratulations.
Easy. Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse. So I'm not that hard to find. And I love talking to folks, as you can probably tell. And I love learning things. And I also, last thing I'll say, I love being told I'm wrong. So if anything that I've said, you've got your back up and you're like, I don't agree. Fine. Come to me because you're going to teach me something. I'm not going to get defensive. I'm not going to fight with you. I'm going to learn something from that exchange.
Like Deion Sanders, not hard to find.
Not hard to
Mike, close it. I have one other question.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
So, Coach2Scale podcast. We have our audience. We're trying to build a community of people who want to get better at coaching and managing and leading salespeople. And to do that, one of the ways is we bring guests on like yourself who have been there, done that, had success, but also banged their head against the wall along the way and are not afraid to share their experiences. Usually people who care the way you care have had that behavior modeled for them somewhere along the way. And so I guess my question is, who is somebody who's coaching, mentorship, somewhere along the way, anywhere, has had an impact on who you are and how you approach things today?
One of them, and unfortunately he's no longer with us, is the man who gave me my break in B2B sales. guy named Paul Bugley. His son, Chris, is still working at ADP, which is where I was. Paul hired me, and he said, I still remember, not because I had the skill set or even the training or the background of the other people in the organization who were coming from places like Xerox selling copiers and fax machines. Again, this is a long time ago. But he said, I think you're going to work harder than anybody else on this team. So it was, I learned early on that you get where you get because somebody decides they're going to give you the break. They're going to give you the chance. And it may not be the person who on the resume or on paper is your person. It's the person, and especially in this day and age, who has grit and determination and resilience and intellectual curiosity and has something that they themselves need to prove or to achieve. And you can't get in the way of those people. And we see it like Richard Branson with Virgin, Phil Knight with Nike. These were people, like, you read their books, they were not going to be denied, period.
No,
So
no.
find and hire those people, whatever their role is, and they will not let you down.
And then train them.
And then train them.
And then train them.
Show them love.
Awesome conversation. We covered a ton of ground. We talked about the 4 W's. We talked about ICP and IOP. Stop using BANT. You learn from different people if you allow yourself to. Bad stuff gets worse. We're not paid for trying and building a lot of MQLs and SQLs in sales. We're paid for closing. We're paid for results. And that if you automate everything and put millions of dollars into the tech stack, you're just going to get worse at scale. So a lot of ground. Again, Mike, thank you very much.
Thank you. Really, I've enjoyed this. And I hope I helped. Even if I helped one person, this was a win.
You helped me. Right. So whatever that's worth. And for everybody out there watching and listening, thanks for doing so. We really appreciate that. Let us know you're out there, though. Engage on LinkedIn. Let us know what you think. Let us know what your top takeaways were. Let us know the types of topics you'd like us to talk about. Because at the end of the day, we want to bring content and we want to bring guests to you that not only interesting, but informative and help you do that hard job that you do every day. We want to make it just a little bit easier. So good luck out there. And until next time, coach them if you want to keep them.